Good morning and welcome to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Today's topic is the future of IT leadership. And our guests for today's show are Mark McDonald, who's the Group Vice President of Executive Programs with Gartner. Morning, Mark. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
So how was Christmas and are you ready for the party for the New Year's?
Yeah, Christmas was good and looking to wrap up a strong 2011 and really looking forward to what's going to come in the new year.
Great. And we also have Thornton May, who is an IT futurist and the Dean of the IT Leadership Academy. Good morning, Thornton. How's life there?
Good morning. It's great to be here.
So you are on your way back to your hometown?
I'm in lovely Biddeford, Maine as we speak.
All right. So how is life with you? Because I'm sure you're painting the picture for what the future looks like for us, all of us out there.
Well, the opportunities have never been more overwhelming.
All right. So that's a very good, positive, and a strong statement. Let's see what's coming ahead of us. So we also have Mark Polansky, who's the Managing Director, North America Information Technology Officer for Korn Ferry International. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Sanjog.
So in your world, the CIOs are looking, or I'm sure they always are looking, but how are they doing?
Well, we got very busy about a year ago, second quarter of 10, and it's continued straight through. So we're seeing a huge demand for what we're going to be speaking about this morning, the transformational CIO.
Now, when it comes to, and this we'll start very quickly with the first question that always everybody thinks that, yes, we have IT leaders always trying to create value, strive to be that business leader who is leveraging IT to create value. All that is great. But then we have an eye for a good leader versus not as good or perhaps an average performer. And we'll start with you, Mark McDonald. When you look at the actual benchmarks, metrics, measures, appraisals that you would do, what is it that was all along being looked for in an IT leader? And now that the new normal has arrived and we are looking at things differently, business differently, IT differently, what is changing and morphing?
Well, I think that it's a great question. And I think it really gets at the crux of what the requirements are for a new leader. The traditional measures of IT effectiveness and IT leadership have always revolved around this notion of scope, cost, and schedule. In other words, can I basically do my job? And one of the things we're seeing, and we started to see last year as organizations were really reimagining IT, is those measures and judgments of effectiveness really kind of breaking out of that box of measuring yourself in current performance and really looking to kind of measure how you're going to drive business performance. And we just completed a survey of more than 2,300 CIOs. And one of the things that's been really fascinating is that the top performers, the organizations that have the most effective and value creating opportunities, are 3 times more likely to measure IT's contribution to business value or business outcome. They're more than 3 times more likely to benchmark against others and to think of their portfolio and investments as literally that, portfolios and investments in changing business performance as opposed to just funding current activities and jobs. And I think that's the essential difference happening now is metrics define the language. The language has been traditionally one of demonstrating that you can do your job. The future is now how you can make the pie bigger and make your organization more successful with the use of technology. And we're seeing the metrics migrating towards them among the leaders. And to be honest with you, everybody else being stuck back in that same 6-sided box of scope, cost, and schedule.
Thornton, if I were to give a white sheet of paper to my 6-year-old daughter and give her crayons and say, reimagine what you want to reimagine, of course, she would come up with whatever she wants to. And the next step will be, yes, I imagined a lot of things differently now, but do I have a different type of blessing and or resources from whosoever I need to get it to make that a reality? So while these people, the new CIOs or the current CIOs who are trying to live in the new world, could imagine or reimagine what they want, are they empowered and enabled?
Well, I would actually say, coming back, if you gave your 3-year-old daughter, or what, 5-year-old or 10-year-old, if you gave a child basic crayons to redesign basically an IT measurement system, the measurement system they came up with would probably be better and less toxic than the measurement systems in place at basically 61% of the marketplace you're looking at right now. Because basically the traditional measures of IT, this is a true problem area because the whole issue of what is measured, when it's measured, and how it's measured have been, basically the high performance, high multiple organizations have come to the conclusion that whole thing is broken. So here's a hypothesis for you. Because every enterprise is different, they need a unique set of metrics for every enterprise. And you don't need the wonders of Gartner. You don't need the wonders of our friends at Korn Ferry to understand that after exhaustive statistical analysis, we found that there are only 500 Fortune 500 CIOs. Each and every one of those individuals need a unique and different set of metrics. And those metrics really need to reflect and operate in 3 different time zones, if you will. Basically, the long now has basically elongated. It's now 0 to 36 months. And then next, which is what we're calling meso futures, which is 37 to 60 months, basically 3 to 5 years. And then later, which is 5 years out. But you really do need that. And so you're looking at new measurements. Some of the things you look at is basically how suits, that is non-IT people, how they think about IT, because that's really the barrier. And this is what, Mark McDonald, it's an honor to be on with you. I'm a big fan of your work, is that basically these mental models get in the way of IT really creating value.
So Thornton, you just mentioned about measures, benchmarks, and metrics, but those are more company-centric. We are talking about how do you handle the measures or benchmarks, or what have been the traditional measures and benchmarks for an IT leader to be, once suppose they go for a performance appraisal.
But they really weren't leadership metrics. For example, what was being measured was inputs, machine happiness. You're 5'9", right? There are, and I know Mark Polansky will back me up on that. I did. From Q2 2010, we've basically been exfoliating, if you will, 5'9" leaders and trying to find people who actually create value, or actually what we call value artists.
What do you say, Mr. Mark Polansky? You have gone through, I'm sure, through your long career, of different decades of people being looked at differently. Why different now?
Yeah, that's totally true, Sanjog, and I certainly agree with parts of what both Mark and Thornton have said. But I'll pick up on the transformative side. What's different now than before? From a macro view, we view the CIO market as having evolved over the last 30 to 40 years in terms of depth, breadth, and certainly complexity. And so that's a backdrop against which everything will be measured. But in the microcosm, in the last 6 years or so, since about 2006, 2007, and certainly exacerbated by the economic crises of 8, 9, and falling into 10, has stood a premium on the cost management side and cost control side. And that is beginning to shift. The companies that get it, large and small, and of course, we generalize that the larger companies get it a little bit faster than the smaller companies, but there are great small companies that get it as well. They are beginning and have actually begun over the last year to 2 years or so to shift out of that cost management, cost control kind of mindset into what we're all talking about, which is a value creating mindset. So instead of playing defense, they're going to offense. Instead of taking costs out to improve the bottom line, they're trying to drive revenue in to improve the bottom line. And that takes guts in a tough economy. It takes guts in an uncertain economic environment. And it requires a whole lot of betting on innovation. So we begin to see the continued separation of the great CIOs from the good or not so good CIOs as those who can lead and those who can innovate, and the bottom line, create value. Thornton's point about each company being different is precisely true. It depends where the company is in its own maturity cycle, where it is in its own competitive cycle. So a company that measures success by market share, or by revenue dollars, or by margin, or by competitive position, and a whole host of other available metrics and measurable quantifiers, those are the issues by which the marketing people will be judged, the manufacturing people will be judged, and so should the IT people being judged. If the company is after market share, then find a way for the CIO to help increase market share and measure him or her on that basis, as an example.
Thornton, if you were to take the different flavors of responses that we got for this question, the first question, the measures and benchmarks and metrics, talk to the CFO versus CEO. What difference do you think you'll get in the responses? Do you think CFO has transformed themselves from a bean counter to an investor? for them to appreciate that, yes, we want to talk about creation of value and not be cost-centric?
I actually do. I actually think the entire, the whole concept of leadership, it really is a gang leadership type of thing now, because I actually see like every one of the C-suite is going through a transformation. And I think Mark Polansky will back me up on this, is that the nature of their searches in these at the top of the house is fundamentally changing. And also, when I say top of the house, I also talk about the board of directors. There's this very interesting association. I'm sure my colleagues are familiar with it. The National Association of Corporate Directors. This is sort of the trade association for Fortune 500 board members. I mean, they are fundamentally realizing that it is leadership is a team sport. And so, like, basically, you see finances now, basically, they're not just bean counters. They're not just, they command the respect not because they pass the standardized tests, but because they too are value artists. And you're actually seeing this amazing trifecta of like the CFO, the CMO, and also the CIO coming together and making magic happen in certain environments. And you said, Sanjog, you wanted some examples. I would say one of the top like transformational CIOs in the world today is Gary King at Chico's. And that's what, I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but Chico's basically, they used to be a hot retailer. Then the wheel came off the wagon, and actually all of the C-suite was fired except Gary. And they sort of built it around basically their transformation. That was when IT actually transformed the organization. And Chico's is back as a like scary good retailer again because of some of the big data work and the analytics that they're doing. But I actually see like leadership is fundamentally changed, and it's blurring between like you're actually building these relationships. You're actually coming together as friends and colleagues and a team. It's not like, oh, the CFO, you're trying to get approval from the CFO. The CFO is actually trying to get you more money. The poor ones.
So this question is for Mark McDonald. Now, here we spoke about, and I guess there's very compelling arguments being made about the transformation actually happening, especially in the mindset more than anything else. Now, with that said, the very asset that we were earlier managing was primarily technology. And yes, information technology, but it was technology. Now we are talking about paradigms. We're talking about the way we are going to handle technology. Most of that would perhaps be shifted. That control will be shifted, or the onus will be shifted for the technology part to somebody else, because we want to get into a service-oriented approach or industrialization approach. So you're left with information. Most people who have come from that old background where they were ready to manage technology and that's what they took pride in, now they've got a new asset or an asset which was a step earlier, but now it has to take the forefront. Do you think the new breed or the current existing IT leaders are ready for that?
That's a great question, Sanjog, and one that's going to fundamentally drive the future of IT. And for better or worse, IT leaders are not ready to embrace information as their primary asset or their primary area of accountability. He has always thought about information as a business responsibility rather than an IT responsibility. And sure, while they were responsible for keeping information accurate, secure, and available, anything beyond that was always viewed as a business responsibility. And that shift of those two things has largely been part of that wall that IT has used to insulate itself from responsibility for benefits realization, that's playing this kind of land grab game and saying, now we're responsible for information is just going to be a loose proposition for really two primary reasons. First off, IT thinks of information as an asset, something that's stored, cleaned, cataloged, administered, warehoused, etc. And you've seen a significant tail off in interest in traditional BI and data warehousing for simply because you're taking a model and a mental model that talks about automation, integration, and standardization and applying it to information, which is really a dynamic resource. And all you wind up doing is creating a static asset from that. And so I think saying that my job is now information while retaining those old beliefs is just going to kill a lot of situations. The other thing is in this separation that IT has focused on, it really has been a way that IT has absolved itself from being accountable and responsible for business results. And as a matter of fact, I'd suggest a better alternative is that as the 5 nines pieces migrate into the cloud, continue to migrate into services, leaders recognize that IT's accountability is the same accountability that other executives have, which is for business results. And so when I've met leading CIOs who recognize this, they've basically said, yeah, information is a tool. It's a fuel for raising business performance. But they stopped talking about information and managing information and controlling information and being responsible for information and really defining and saying, putting that stuff into performance improvements and changes that are inherent in the technology rather than just administering the systems that either control back office processes, which is going away, and just replacing those with systems that administer information as a static asset.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back and we'll target a question to Mark Polansky, which is, I'm sure you've seen a number of job descriptions created over the years. What is a typical job description for a CIO now? And what is it supposed to include and or exclude now and going forward? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We're always talking business. Talk to an expert. Call now, toll free, 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
We live in an instant-on world, mobile and connected. To compete, you want data center flexibility, so you can adapt quickly to changing business needs while keeping information safe. Introducing Enterprise Cloud Compute Services, HP's solution for managing secure servers, storage, and networks, delivered as a service. Pay only for what you need. Create order out of chaos. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Start shaping your cloud at hp.com. We live in an instant-on world, mobile, connected, and fluid. Competing in this world takes a special kind of workplace technology that adapts to change, that allows seamless and personalized interaction. Introducing Workplace 360, HP's full lifecycle desktop management solution, delivered as a service. User subscriptions allow you to gain financial control and flexibility. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Visit hp.com for answers.
Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now, toll free, 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Aul.
Welcome back. So, question for Mark Polansky. The job description for CIO, how you feel is it being developed now, and what is the anticipation of that to morph in the future, and all these changes that are being made, whether in terms of inclusion, exclusion, and additions that you are doing in the job description, is that acceptable to majority of the CIOs out there?
Sanjog, we don't think that the spec is changing per se, but we think that the aspects and the complexities of what's being said is changing. So, for example, over the last 10 years or so, the typical job spec for CIO has what you'd expect, the corporate leadership in terms of participating in business strategy, creating an IT vision that can be inspired and followed, key governance, and systems development and security, and delivery and performance, which is number one, of course, deliver, as well as the technology infrastructure and operations and customer service, and certainly management and budgeting. Those things haven't changed. Those things remain the same. What does change is the details. So let's take one, for example, that is so prominently discussed today, and that's technology and infrastructure. First, the issue of the cloud. The cloud is a technology of the moment. It is not an IT strategy. It is not a way to provide and create value other than being used as a tool, whether it was the internet 10 years ago or the internet 5 years ago or a client server 15 years ago. Technology is of the moment. What's different is that it takes a different skill set to manage services that are not being provided directly by one staff. So it's more around the contractual, the service level agreement, the managing an external resource. In fact, managing a mosaic of external resources. So in the December 1st issue of CIO magazine, there's an interesting article, which is unusual for CIO, but there's an interesting article there of the idea of managing what they refer to, and I think a good word, an ecosystem of vendors. Friends of mine like Rob Webb, the CIO of Hilton, and Filippo Passerini, arguably the best CIO in the country at Procter & Gamble, and Alan Matula at Royal Dutch Shell. These guys are using as much external resources, which includes the cloud, as they can, with the proper amount of security, integrity, and manageability and accountability. And their job now on the technology side is to manage that ecosystem of vendors that come to them and want to play with each other in the sandbox. And of course, the reaction is, well, those are huge companies. They don't have that kind of IT budget to command that kind of other response and attention. And then my answer there is banding together, smaller to mid-sized companies band together in industry associations such as PISA, the Pharmaceutical Information Association, and many others, and creating cooperatives, if you will, to gang up and get that kind of cloud, get that kind of critical mass, or another organization such as FIM, and leverage that sort of buying power. So back to the original point, close the loop, is the what is, if it needs to be managed, hasn't changed. It's still people, process, technology. It's the how.
Now, Thornton, based on what Mark's shared, there are a lot of infrastructure and those things are top of mind type of items which are being included. But doesn't it kind of almost demote the CIO to be an operational manager of sorts, or yes, a very senior level manager, instead of really being able to remain a leader and someone who can actually envision, think beyond the obvious, which is, okay, I got to go to the cloud, so I have to go to the cloud. Big deal. Yes, you got to get lieutenants who are very well versed in it, and you have to get a number of good vendors for selection, but that's still more of a managing IT versus leading business.
Well, I think there's a portion of this. I mean, if you look at where CIOs actually spend their time, based on the research coming out of the MIT's CISR group, the Center for Information Systems Research, maybe 44% of your time, and these are the high performance, is spent basically making sure that you basically have operational like supremacy, or basically 5 nines with regards to you basically keeping the digital lights on. But then it's really where you differentiate yourself is what you do with the next 66 of your time. So I think if you show me someone who is purely strategic, that's just noise. Because ultimately, you have some operational responsibility.
So when you use this number 44%, and Mark McDonald, I'll ask you this question. This percentage is one thing, but then do you think the bandwidth for that lone warrior out there, does that person really have that bandwidth to be able to lead and also manage these humongous transformational technology-centric initiatives?
You're asking Thornton or you're asking me?
I'm asking Mr. Mark McDonald.
Oh, okay, great, Sanjog. The answer, I think, to that question is twofold. One is, I completely agree with Mark Polansky that the cloud is a technology, not particularly a strategy. But one of the interesting things that happen as you move there is the whole notion of IT transformation, at least from companies like Kelly Services and others that have been working in the cloud for a period of time, kind of goes away. And so, Sanjog, your question is this notion of that a leader has to cover multiple fronts at the same time, and there's tumultuous change, and there's just the volume of stuff is going beyond. What I see leaders doing constantly is an ability to focus down and to concentrate their attention on a few of the fundamental things that they have to get right, that they have to change, that they have to evolve. And so one of the big distinguishing characteristics when you meet somebody at an event or something to figure out the difference between a leader and somebody who's really busy is leaders have a tendency to be able to talk about not so much where all the things that they're doing, but the 2 or 3 significant business results they're driving. And when we talk to CIOs, 88% of them, they believe 88% of their impact, their reason for being, comes by being able to focus in on a few business issues. And only about 3% of their credibility, they told us, actually comes from their ability to manage multiple things and do multiple things all at the same time. And I think that's a big part of the paradigm shift that you see is if you can explain the two things you're going to do, and you're going to do it extremely well right now. It doesn't mean you do them for forever, but the fewer things you do faster to create business results is about the only way you can manage this environment. And to be honest with you, is about the only way that your peers across your organization are managing it. And so focus and speed and cycle time are essential elements of leaders, an essential way of managing this.
And picking up on that, this is Thornton talking, is that not only do you need to create focus inside the IT organization, the great IT leaders, basically, those people create focus inside the business. Because basically, as spending time in the C-suite, as all of you gentlemen know, I mean, basically, some of these C-level executives have the attention span of ferrets. And so you really do have to focus on these versus spinning all these plates. These are the three things that matter to us now. You get them done and move the lever and then move on. I mean, and it goes back to like Jeffrey Moore's great, if you will, framework, core and context. Basically, you really want to focus on core, which are those things which differentiate, which actually fundamentally do to make you distinctive and put you outside the realm of your competitors.
Question for Mark Polansky. If you were to be invited by the C-suite of a business, what do you think you're likely to hear more? I want to change my leadership or bring a new leader because the current one does not create value, or the current one does not successfully execute on a cloud transformation project?
It's a great question, and one very apropos to our business today. We know, Sanjog, that somewhere between 75 and 80% of the CIO searches which we conduct on an ongoing basis are not of the ilk of help, my CIO's gone and they need a new one, I need a replacement. Rather, that 3/4 or so of the CIO searches that we conduct today are more around elevating the function, elevating the person in that function. And the likely way to complete that sentence is my CIO today is not respected, not connected, not relevant to the company's management and its goals and its objectives and its business plans. Just that disconnect of the CIO who stays in his or her own office, tech speaks to senior management, and all the other cliches that we speak of as that, let's say, the bottom half of the world of CIOs who are still viewing themselves as the super technicians with a big S on their chest. So today, our clients are C-suites that invite us in to conduct the replacement CIO search are looking for the attributes of understanding and connecting with the business, of building relationship, of creating value, and of course, innovation. We haven't spoken yet this morning much about innovation, but innovation has to be part of the agenda going forward, whether it's the innovation around cloud or innovation around ways to use technology principally to make work more effective, to make and create and sustain a competitive advantage. And sustain is really critical because the timeline on this stuff is so short. If I come out with a way to capture the tech image on an iPhone, as Kai Chiarello did at JP Morgan Chase, you know that Citi is going to be 6 months behind, but they'll be there. So it's a constant, ongoing, sustainable innovation. And then you're talking about the truly great CIOs.
So a follow-up question on this one is that when you actually speak to them, are they talking in a result-driven society that we live in? Are they still talking subjective terms that I want to get a CIO who rest of the people like and like to follow versus somebody who delivered results?
Yeah, they're both important, obviously. The analogy to our friend in real estate who proclaimed this location is everything is important. Clearly, a CIO has no chance of a full seat at the table unless they can deliver. And that just goes with the territory. That's the ante. That goes with the job totally. But it's the really great CIOs who can lead, who can show the leadership characteristics up, down, and across. That's the ultimate differentiator.
Let's take a quick break. Listeners, will be right back. And Thornton, when we come back, I'd like to pick up the word innovation from Mark Polansky's response that this has not been discussed, and that's what we should talk about. Now, we talk about innovation, and it has been a buzzword, and some people use it as a fad that I'm innovating. But then that definition has been mighty fuzzy in many cases. Now, when rubber meets the road, is that sustainable? and disruptive and actually result-oriented innovation, is that part of ongoing, like the future CIO or future IT leader's job description? And if yes, how is that going to be measured? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Now you don't have to stay linked to your desktop or laptop. Take Voice America on the go and listen anywhere. Get our mobile app for iPhone, BlackBerry, or Android at the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market.
We live in an instant-on world, mobile, connected, and fluid. Competing in this world takes a special kind of workplace technology that adapts to change, that allows seamless and personalized interaction. Introducing Workplace 360, HP's full lifecycle desktop management solution, delivered as a service. User subscriptions allow you to gain financial control and flexibility. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Visit hp.com for answers. We live in an instant-on world, mobile and connected. To compete, you want data center flexibility, so you can adapt quickly to changing business needs while keeping information safe. Introducing Enterprise Cloud Compute Services, HP's solution for managing secure servers, storage, and networks, delivered as a service. Pay only for what you need. Create order out of chaos. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Start shaping your cloud at hp.com.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Aul.
Welcome back. So, Thornton, when it comes to innovation, yes, we have kind of used this word, in fact, till we turn blue in many cases. When it comes to being part of a CIO's job description, it always almost has been there for the most part. But then how seriously have we been using it lately? And is that a measurable, is something which you would want to measure and can be measured as part of their performance appraisal, whether they get fired or not because they did innovation or not?
It is, and I actually think that we are exfoliating a certain tranche of CIOs who do not innovate. But I think we do have to, before we go forward, is actually define the term, because it's fundamentally misdefined and misunderstood in the marketplace. Innovation is not a synonym for invention. Invention is basically the conversion of CAD into ideas. Innovation is the reconversion of those ideas into CAD. So there's this misunderstanding that somehow innovation is a cash flow negative exercise. Innovate, and it's not, nor is innovation a synonym with novelty. Newness is not innovation. Innovation is something that makes you money. And this goes right back to basically Mark McDonald's comment, brilliant opening comment, and Mark Polansky's like also supporting comments, is that it's all about value. And the way you create value in today's world is actually creating high margin new product and service. So without a doubt, if you're going to have a sustainably great career as a CIO, you're going to have to be innovative, i.e. you basically create new ideas, processes, and services that you can charge a lot of money for.
Mr. Mark McDonald, with all the unique characteristics that we need on the job description, and of course, something that the current breed of IT leaders and the newer breed that we are going to see, is it going to be this complicated or something totally different than what we have seen in the past? And based on, I guess, I'm not sure whose comment it was, but it was 20% of the top CIOs are the ones who have fewer levels of fear, uncertainty, and doubt with what they are dealing with today. God help us with respect to what is it going to be the state of IT leadership, future IT leadership, when only 20% of current people get it.
Well, I think there's two aspects to what you're talking about here. Is there's always a need for leaders and leaders who are managers that are able to execute. The nature of what IT leadership is fundamentally changing, and in any transition, there's a lot of people that get it at different rates. And the big distinguishing characteristic we keep seeing with IT leaders and executives who are really doing it is that ability to focus down, is that ability to recognize the difference between their job and the reason they were hired. And so a lot of IT professionals spend an inordinate amount of their time demonstrating that they know how to do their job. And it goes all the way back to the metrics they use, what they think is important, how they describe themselves, etc. And they lose the fact that executives recognize that they already assume that you're competent in the role you have. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in that role. And as you move up the IT and leadership change, that just becomes more and more important. So the reason why Thornton mentioned people have the executives have the attention span of a ferret is because they assume the execution of that, the recommendations you're making, your ability to do your job is not in question. That's not why I hired you. I hired you because you're going to make the pie bigger. You're going to make the team stronger. You're going to make the organization better. And for technology in this tremendous transformation where there really is one role that's starting to be really important, which is technology, which goes well beyond what we think of as IT, is really amplifying enterprise performance, taking the strategies, the signals, the things that work, adding energy to them, removing distortion from them, enabling them to scale and enabling them to be listened and interpreted to by customers and markets in ways that create value, I think are really kind of getting at the ethos associated with the kind of leader that is necessary. So leaders that continue to say that I'm going to work and lead IT, I'm going to lead those systems, those applications, the infrastructure, they'll still have jobs, they'll still have a career. It's just they're consolidating into those organizations that are providing the services. And what we're winding up with, or what we're moving towards, is an IT organization that acts small in terms of being nimble, focused, high impact, agile, cycle time driven. And I think those are the leadership characteristics that people listening to the show should start to think about. Not what am I responsible for, but what results have I created? What results have I led to it? How have I increased the productivity of my team? How have I reduced the cycle time in which I'm able to deliver those results?
Mark puts his finger on a huge opportunity for your listeners, Sanjog, because what we have here is we have a huge disconnect because there is a huge demand for IT leaders, true IT leaders, as we've defined and as Mark just did a nice job like specifying, right? The supply is not sufficient. And that goes into this whole issue of the pipeline, because the tragedy is that most organizations, because they're so buttoned down and so cost, if you will, cost focused, is that they spend no money developing basically executive potential. Because I would argue that basically leadership is not just an innate quality. You don't pop out of the womb as a Filippo Passerini, maybe, or now a Matula. Maybe they accumulated leadership, if you will, chops over time because of the experiences and because of the substantive investments that their organizations made in making sure that they would become a great leader at the time when they needed to be. And that's the tragedy, is that most organizations do not invest in their IT people.
So, Mr. Mark Polansky, what do you think your concerns are, and where are you concerned and or hopeful with respect to the type of animals you're seeing who are supposed to be our future IT leaders?
Yeah, great question. Firstly, Mark McDonald, who just spoke a moment ago, I could not have imagined a better summary of what a truly great CIO is. Mark, thank you so much for that. And Thornton, your overlay in that in terms of organizational readiness, organizational ability of true leadership is exactly on point. And so we've been talking, and much of what's been written and said about great CIOs, transformational CIOs, the top CIOs, is true around this idea of value creation and leveraging innovation and leveraging technology of the moment and all the other tools that are there. And they are just tools. So again, cloud design strategy is a tool. Consumerized data access is a tool. It's not an iPad. It's not a technology. So we put those aside and focus on what really matters at the end of the day. And so to talk about the pipeline, one must first understand that this whole conversation is not black and white. Between the top CIOs, the Passerinis and the Shajendas of the world and the Hinshaws of the world and everyone else, the 90% out there or the 80% out there, it's not a black and white. There are shades of gray. There are people that are living in both worlds. But what's the point in us talking about this stuff, and what's the point about your listeners listening and reading this stuff, is so that they can bring some of this into their professional lives, so that they can think a little bit more often about their corporate situation as many of these greater CIOs, so that they could aspire and grow. And therefore, we need to turn our attention towards two things, towards mentoring and towards lifelong learning. Mentoring internal to the corporation is legendary, whether it is, in fact, the Roster or Filippo Pastorini. You go to some of these top CIOs and you ask them about their great accomplishments in their professional life, and they can quote you the number of other Fortune 500 CIOs who once worked for them and were mentored and developed by them. And the number for Ralph is in the 20s, and the number for Filippo is in the 30s. And then you have organizations that operate that way. GE has more than 50 alumni in the Fortune 500 CIO role. So it's a conscious effort to mentor, to develop, to inspire, to bring out the best through training, through on-the-job experience, through developing the pipeline. From that point of view, Sanjog, I'm very encouraged because I'm seeing a lot of brilliant young leaders. And I'm hopeful, not yet convinced, but hopeful that whatever the percentage is, we throw around numbers, whatever that percentage is of CIOs that wouldn't necessarily fit into our top tier descriptions, as Mark just so eloquently articulated, will aspire to do more, will aspire to self-improve. And so lifelong learning, listening to shows like this, reading books, going to industry seminars, going to industry group meetings, and finding a mentor and continuously looking for ways to improve.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back. And Thornton, when we come back, I'd like to ask a question there, which does it really require the right DNA for you to be truly prepared for being the right type of future IT leader and be successful in that role? And if it is nature versus nurture, and to what degree do we have the ecosystem created, as Mark Polansky mentioned just now, in terms of GE being a great incubation ground? And there are some siloed but very good universities of sorts which are churning out good IT leaders. But if we do not have enough, what needs to happen in order for us to be able to prepare enough IT leaders who are of the right quality and caliber, who can handle the new world that is coming? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The future of online TV is here. View exclusive content from your favorite talk radio hosts and new programs that you can't see anywhere else. Visit voiceamerica.tv today.
We live in an instant-on world, mobile and connected. To compete, you want data center flexibility, so you can adapt quickly to changing business needs while keeping information safe. Introducing Enterprise Cloud Compute Services, HP's solution for managing secure servers, storage, and networks, delivered as a service. Pay only for what you need. Create order out of chaos. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Start shaping your cloud at hp.com. We live in an instant-on world, mobile, connected, and fluid. Competing in this world takes a special kind of workplace technology that adapts to change, that allows seamless and personalized interaction. Introducing Workplace 360, HP's full lifecycle desktop management solution, delivered as a service. User subscriptions allow you to gain financial control and flexibility. The instant-on enterprise is here. Are you ready? Visit hp.com for answers.
Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now. Toll free, 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Aul.
welcome back. So, Thornton, the question here is the nature versus nurture issue. How much of our DNA is responsible for churning out the right IT leader versus if it is at all nurture, and for that matter, it should be, because otherwise we would only have a very few set of good IT leaders. Then those universities that exist, which could be organizations which are incubating good leaders, how many of them are there to truly fulfill the needs of the organizations worldwide, not just in the United States?
Well, a couple things. One is, and I think my colleagues will agree with me, there are some individuals who have no business being an IT leader. They're just genetically unsuited to lead. All right? They're scary people, put them in the back, something like that. But that said, that your great leaders actually evolved over time, but via a set of experiences. And some of those experiences come out of, if you will, investments from large organizations. But that's gone away. I think that the onus, and I think Mark McDonald mentioned this, the onus is on and Mark Polansky picked up on it as well, is that the onus is on the individual to take personal responsibility for basically self-educating. And there are a variety of ways to do that. Now, the traditional path is to become more value-focused, has been for an pure IT type to go get an MBA. And and the EMBAs now are basically very time-sliced and very customer-friendly. And that's one path, but that's an expensive path. The other way is to take advantage of this ecosystem of knowledge experiences out there, because most major universities actually have very active outreach, if you will, IT outreach programs coming out of the business schools, the executive education. Two that come to mind are Ohio State University, Fisher College of Business, the CIO Solutions Gallery, that is a free session, and at University of Kentucky, the CIO Practicum Series. And what these are is sort of like a blend between Oprah, Dr. Phil, and a Harvard Business School case study, because you actually bring about 40 or 50 people together. These are all C-suite type of folks, and they solve problems. And that actually builds your personal network, because I think you need a personal network to help you become a great leader. And it also shows you how people think about solving problems. So there is hope, but you're going to have to get out of the office. And I see the strategy, particularly in a lot of New York firms, where or the people who actually go to event, knowledge creating, training, or executive development events actually have to take a personal day because the organization doesn't perceive the value. And that's just a tragedy.
Mr. Mark McDonald, what we speak about here is something which is not supposed to have a boil the ocean type of a problem. It is something where we have to creatively think. Like, for example, Gartner is in almost every country where there is some active business and IT is going on. So when you look at the people in different organizations in those different parts of the country, what consistency is seen in that local community where the community and individuals both are coming together to raise the bar for what a CIO needs to be, and also identify and nurture the right type of talent so that we, in a comprehensive manner, attack this problem versus being on this show, talk about for an hour. And of course, some people will listen, they'll go about doing their own work and forget about this.
Well, a couple of things. One is in the last couple of years, we've been specifically concentrating not on the CIO education, but rather on executive education. And so as part of our Gartner Symposium, we have this thing called the Executive Seminar, which is a one-day, very concentrated set of briefings where the CIO brings one of their other C-suite peers to the table, and we talk about business issues and technology related to business issues. And I think that's actually probably at least as powerful or more powerful than saying I'm going to acquire individual skills. It's not so much that I have to build awareness or teach my peers IT, but rather that I have to have my organization understand kind of some of the realities there. I think the other thing, and Thornton mentioned some good stuff and good programs, is the executive education and the distance learning stuff that's being provided now is particularly provided by non-tenured faculty, is getting much, much more focused on the practical things you need to understand. And as Mark Polansky mentioned before, you have to learn to become a leader. A leader comes from experience. I can be a team manager based upon my raw talent, but I need experience and perspective, lead at the executive level that I'm talking about here. So mentoring is important, but getting that mentoring opportunity and bringing those things together comes not from just acquiring knowledge, but from making the connections that are necessary. So in Chicago, there's a great program called IC Stars that helps build that next generation of leaders. And that's an all volunteer kind of organization that really concentrates on mentoring. Globally around the world, what we're seeing is really the exposure, if you will, of the whole team of executives to these business issues from a technology perspective, really helping to kind of get appreciation for what's going on, but also more importantly, to draw out, if you will, the mental models that your peers, your C-suite peers use to think about these issues, which then again helps you coordinate and communicate with them in a much more better fashion.
Okay, 10 seconds each, only one word to say. What is the best or the most important skill for a future IT leader? Just one word, please. Thornton.
Narrative.
Mark Polansky.
People.
Mark McDonald.
Solution focus.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, I'd really like to thank you all for sharing your thoughts of what the future of IT leadership is supposed to be and how do we prepare. I really thank you so much. Now, views, listeners, if you have any questions or views, please send us to views@CIOTalkRadio.com. That is views@CIOTalkRadio.com. Thank you again for listening to CIO Talk Radio. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.